Monday, September 22nd, 2025 meeting. Meeting's called to order. All rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, good evening, everyone. Next on the agenda is a public hearing of proposed 2026 school corporation budget, including capital projects and bus replacement plans. Public testimony will be taken related to the proposed 26 budget. This time, if there's anybody in the audience, I can approach the board. Please come up, state your name. Last record shows when we came up on the proposed budget on the budget including capital projects and replacement plans.
With that, I mean, in case if there's people that are watching online, if they're watching online, the budget is posted, so it is available on our website, so they are able to see the proposed 2026 budget as well as the capital projects plan and the bus replacement plan. So those are online if anyone wants to have access to those on our website. And then at the October meeting is when we will bring then the budget for adoption. Okay. Questions on proposed budget?
All right. Number 3, second preliminary determination hearing. Public testimony on the project will be taken prior to adoption of the resolution.
This is when you're going to start reading.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is for the board to hold a project preliminary hearing on a proposed project. If you're interested in speaking at the hearing, after a presentation by the administration and advisors, start from the beginning again. Next item on the agenda is for the board for the project preliminary hearings on the proposed project. If you're interested in speaking at the hearing, there'll be time for you to do so. After a presentation by the administration and its advisors, there'll be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the project. At the hearing, we're asking each person to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and the topic will be limited to the proposed project under consideration. The notice of the preliminary determination hearing was published as legally required. The first preliminary determination hearing was held on September 8th, 2025. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Gaylor to explain the purpose of this hearing. Mr. Gaylor.
Thank you. Pursuant to Indiana Code 20-26-7-37, before a school corporation may spend more than $1 million to build, repair, or alter a school building that will be financed by a lease or bonds, it must hold a public hearing in which explanations of the potential value of the project to the school corporation and community are given. Similarly, pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-20-3.5, a school corporation must hold 2 public hearings and adopt a resolution to preliminarily determine to issue bonds or enter a lease for a project which has a total project cost in excess of a non-controlled project, or if the school corporation has a debt service fund tax rate above a certain amount. These public hearings and the adoption of resolutions are the very beginning of the legal process. These resolutions establish the maximum financial terms for the proposed project. And real quick, the executive summary, the first preliminary determination, so pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-20, as we talked about, we are entering in this meeting, school corporation, as we talked about, entering a lease or issue bonds for the construction or renovation of school buildings resulting in the total cost in excess of certain thresholds and due to our school corporation's debt service fund tax rate, it must hold the 2 hearings on its preliminary determination to do so.
All right, we will now hear from Mr. Gailey about the process of determining and communicating the project between me and the need for the project. Mr. Gailey?
Lindsay to join us. So we do have both our bond counsel as well as our financial advisors joining us virtually. So when we do, if there are questions, both of them will be available virtually to answer questions as well as myself. As we're looking at the need for the project, so we are looking at the renovation of and improvements to facilities throughout the school corporation, including the construction of a field house, site and athletic improvements, and the purchase of equipment, technology, and buses. So a little bit of history and why to this, as we talked about at our last meeting, we talked about this was a combination, the $20.5 million that we were looking at, that $2 billion of that is for school buses. And as I kind of mentioned, that because of Senate Bill 1 and our legislators in the last legislative session, that we had been going to the city and the city had been working with the school corporation and giving us 0% interest loans for the buses. And because of Senate Bill 1, there had to be a 1-year pause on that, a waiting period, before we could go back, unless we go through our preliminary determination hearings that we're doing right now, then we can continue doing that. So $2 million of that $20.5 million is kind of set aside for buses, being able to go to the city after we have these hearings and being able to talk to them about continuing then to purchase buses like we have the past few years. So I did kind of want to establish that $2 million of it for buses set aside so we continue to go through the city to be able to get 0% interest for our buses. Generally, we purchase 2 per year, so it's around $400,000 each year that we will be doing that over the potentially next 4 to 5 years is what we're looking at. Or sorry, next probably 2 to 3 years. Okay. Also, looking at, as we talked about at the first preliminary determination hearing, I mentioned that of that $20.5 million is that there is money set aside for a field house. As I publicly mentioned in the first determination hearing, at this time, because of Senate Bill 1 and because of the impact that we have received of losses in property taxes in our operations fund, we will not immediately be pursuing the field house. It will still be part of the projects, part of the hearings, but because we have lost currently right now approximately $1.5 million in circuit breaker losses, and with Senate Bill 1 and the new homestead credits and additional credits through property taxes, we are looking at potentially another $400,000 loss. So with us losing close to $2 million in our operations fund, we have decided that we are going to wait on that field house, because if we decide to move forward and put another $15 million towards that, that will then pressure our operations even further, making us lose additional money in our operations fund. So of that $20.5 million, we are moving forward with the whole thing, but it allows us the flexibility that if legislators come through in the next legislative session or two, and they decide to provide some relief to school corporations, it will allow us to then immediately start moving forward with a field house if our finances allow us to do so. So wanted to kind of share where we are kind of with the why, the history, and where we are with those different pieces of the puzzle. Other pieces that we would be looking at, as I mentioned, the school buses. We're also looking at a playground at Central Elementary School, looking at potentially the field, the soccer field, changing that to turf, and renovations of the admin building and adding a board meeting room to the administration building would be the other projects that we are looking at within this total amount. Any additional items, Kristen or Lindsay, that you'd like to add at that piece? Okay so far? Okay. Good. Excellent.
All righty. We'll now hear from Mr. Gailey about how the proposed project will be financed, as well as information about the effect on the typical property taxpayer. Mr. Gailey.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to look at the financials. I do have kind of a presentation of the preliminary determination hearing. This is the same presentation we had at our first one, but we will go through it again and talk a little bit about the financial piece of that. So as we're looking here, as we talked about, this page has listed our existing debt. So this goes through and shows what the existing debt is. So if you see the kind of yellowish piece that's on the top of the first two lines, those are GO bonds for our buses that are listed there. And then kind of the pink reddish area that's at the bottom, this area that years ago that we did a refinancing, and then kind of the teal area through the middle, that's kind of showing our current layered debt. So that is our current debt that you see through there. As you kind of look at that, you can see in 27, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a drop in 27, that we do have some debt that's falling off. So when we go to show how this new $20.5 million could be layered, you're going to see it kind of fill in those areas. So this is the existing debt that we have, and then we will layer in new debt on top of that, which I'll show you in a later slide. We can kind of layer that in various ways. We're going to kind of talk about one way here shortly. The next page goes through, and this is just the existing annual debt, service, and lease rental payments, that you can see what the payments are from 24 through 2040 throughout this area. So this is taking that slide before and then showing you the actual numbers with that slide. The next little slide is the actual calculation of GO bond capacity that we do have. So if we decided just to go with GO bonds, this would kind of show what the total. You can see the total is $6.1 million listed there in the middle. You can see the $200,000, that's a bus that's listed there. And then you can see what would be available if we decided that we wanted to just use GO bonds. You can see $5.9 million would be our capacity for GO bonds. Then the next slide is going to go through, and this is a summary of the proposed financing information. So as I kind of mentioned, the very first line there is the $20.5 million. That's the maximum total borrowing for projects and buses that we're talking about. You can see $18.5 million is the assumed project borrowing amount in bonds, because you take the $2 million for the buses, that would still be GO bonds with the city out of there. Then you can continue the estimated proceeds, $18.1 million. And then it kind of has April of 2026. This is kind of the earliest that we would be looking at the issuance of bonds. So earliest, worst case scenario would be April of 2026. And then the assumed bond repayment term would be for just under 20 years. And then it goes through the estimated bond total interest cost, which is $12.3 billion, the assumed annual school bus payment from debt service, as we talked about, 2 buses a year at $400,000, and then the estimated net increase to the debt service levy of $887,174, which then the estimated net increase to debt service tax rate, 0.0753. So you can see this information listed here. Then as we continue to the next slide is going to go through, and this has the existing debt, but then layered into it, it has then one scenario of how we could layer in this new debt into there. So when you look at the purple area, which is in years, as you can see, 26 through year 2030, 2026 to 2030, that purple at the top, this is going to be the $2 million in buses that are layered there. Then when you start to kind of see the different steps in the teal area would be then the $18.5 million that's layered throughout the remaining years over that, just under 20 years. When we're looking at this, you can see that we have kind of stepped it every 5 years down a little bit. The reason for stair stepping it every 5 years is because as a school corporation, there's different needs that arise. There might be a time when roofs have to be replaced, or a large kind of purchase has to be kind of made to replace a large item, HVAC, mechanical, electrical, or plumbing. So that's why we have kind of in this scenario kind of layered it within every 5 years to give a little bit of flexibility that if something was of need, you could go back in and be able to kind of fill that in as needed over those 5 years. Then as we go to the next slide, this is kind of then same way taking that previous slide and then putting it into numbers. So you can see the existing debt service. Then you can see when you layer in that 18.5 million proposed mortgage and bonds, and then kind of even putting in the bus repayments, which as I mentioned, 26 to 2030, which is at the beginning, but then the others going down through 2040. And then you can see then what the total annual existing debt service lease rental payments would be going through starting there, 2026 through the 2045 listed. Questions so far? Then the next slide. So the next slide is going to be a summary of the existing monthly tax rate impacts. So when you're looking at this right column, I do want to remind that you want to multiply this times 12 so that you get what a yearly amount would be. So when you're looking at, that's going to be the monthly increase. Take that times 12. These numbers are also, you have to remember, this is if you are not at your property tax caps. So when you're looking at the property tax caps, you can see the market value they put together, depending upon if you have a home worth 100,000, 150, 194, 250, 300, and 350. The reason for the 194, because that's the median home value in our school corporation, according to U.S. Census data. So that's why you're kind of an odd number of 194.3. That's because that's what the median home value in our school corporation. So you can see what the increase in net assessed valuation, what the increase would be. Again, depending upon what that value, you take that times 12. Again, we're going to talk about property tax caps here in just a minute. You can see then also agricultural land. So you can see per 1 acre, and that's per 100 acres listed there. So then that way, if you needed to kind of multiply it out, you could calculate by the acreage or per 100 acres, depending upon how large parcel of agricultural land you have. Then you can see then if it's a per $100,000 non-homestead, residential, and long-term care facilities, and then the $100,000 commercial and industrial property as well. So those are kind of listed through there. Then as we go right here, the tax cap insight. So a lot of the homes that you can see within the school corporation are already at the property tax caps, but this kind of goes through and explains them. So the very top line, you can see where people live, what percentage in those areas make up the school corporation. So you've got Lawrenceburg, you have Lawrenceburg A and B, Aurora City, Greendale A and B. So the Lawrenceburg, that very first column, is actually, even though it says Lawrenceburg, the 012, that's the county portion of our school corporation. So that would be if you go out past Scenic, and past Scenic, that area is county. Those would be, they make up 9.8% of the portion of our tax base. Then within Lawrenceburg, so Lawrenceburg A and B, so it'll be up on the hill, coming into downtown Lawrenceburg, that makes up 60.1% of our school corporation tax base. Aurora, 1.5. Aurora has a little piece down right now where Bob Evans is. Down in that area makes up a small little sliver, which the Aurora, there's a new, was a hospital office, something things being built there, a bank right there, that's it. But they also have that in, Aurora has a TIF area all right there. But that is a small 1.5% of our tax base. And then Greendale A and B. So when you're talking about Greendale, going out to the front entrance of Hidden Valley, Valley Woods, that's going to make up 28.7% of our tax base. So all of those areas added together makes up the total tax base for our school corporation. So then you can see circuit breakers then allocable to the school corporation. So you can kind of see for each column what's listed there. Taxing district total rates, so you can see the rates for each of those areas. And then you can see that a 1% cap properties hitting the tax rate. So depending upon if you're out in the county area, it would be $1 million before you're hitting those caps. But if you're in Lawrenceburg, so if you're in Lawrenceburg on the hill or downtown Lawrenceburg, if you have a value of $94,900, you're hitting your cap once you hit that amount. Then Aurora, because there's very little, it's it doesn't apply here. Greendale, if you have property that's at $104,600, that's when a home would be hitting its property tax caps. But then you go down to 2% and to 3%, so you can see right there listed for each one of the categories, if there's any, none, or to all that are hitting those property tax caps, listed within those different levels. So this kind of gives a scenario of the property tax caps and the rates there. And that is the end of this this list right here. Lindsay or Kristen, anything either one of you wanted to add to the explanation of that? Okay, so far? Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
all right, we will now open the public hearing part. As I mentioned earlier, we ask that you state your name and address, come up to the podium, and limit your comments to the proposed project and financing. Keep any comments to 3 minutes and avoid being repetitive, if possible. Is there anybody in the audience that can come up to the podium and speak to the board? Alrighty, at this time we have no one that wants to come up and speak. Mr. Gailey, can you please summarize the project resolution?
Correct. At this time, the project resolution is required when the school corporation is planning to spend more than $1 million per building. It contains the estimated hard and soft construction cost and the cost of issuance, and establishes the total project cost. It also contains the estimated tax impact.
All right, thank you. Next, can I have a motion to adopt the project resolution? Ms. Rybel, need a second motion? Mr. Jones? Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Could I have a motion to adopt preliminary termination resolution? Need a motion, please, Mr. Knigan? Need a second, Ms. Nance? Anybody have any questions or comments? All right, Ms. Gilly, can you please summarize the reimbursement resolution?
For this one, actually, we need to back up one of the preliminary determination resolution. For this one, the preliminary determination resolution is required when a school is planning to finance more than a certain amount for a given facility. It contains the total project cost, maximum annual payment and lease term, and other financial terms such as the estimated principal amount and tax impact.
All righty, now can you summarize the reimbursement resolution?
You first need to take a vote to adopt the preliminary determination resolution.
Need a motion to.
You already have, you got your first and second already. You just need to take a vote.
All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, so now if Mr. Gilly, if you could summarize the reimbursement resolution.
The next resolution is a reimbursement resolution relating to the financing of the construction project. This resolution permits the school corporation to reimburse itself for the bond proceeds for any cash which it might spend on the project prior to the closing of the bonds. It is required by federal tax law in order to preserve the school corporation's ability to reimburse itself.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the reimbursement resolution? Mr. Miller, second, Ms. Shepherd. Anybody have any questions or concerns? All those in favor, please raise your hand. 7-0, thank you. This is the end of the project hearing and second preliminary determination hearing. This meeting is adjourned.
Kristen, Lindsay, you guys okay? Anything you guys have?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Okay.
Let me go turn it on here.
Well, I'm not looking, I'm just asking.
Done.